share a few housekeeping notes with you. This session is being recorded and will be available for playback on realtorparty.realtor next week. We'll send out a notice to all of you when that's available, and you can review it or share the link as you like. Please make sure your microphone is muted and your video stays off unless you've been called on to ask a question later. I'm told this keeps the demand on the bandwidth to a minimum. There will be time after the presentations for Q&A and for a discussion and an exchange of ideas and strategies that all of you may have used. When we get to that Q&A and discussion time, we hope you will engage in a dialogue with us. You may use the raise hand feature, wait to be called on, and then unmute yourself and ask your question or share your idea. As a reminder, to find the raise hand feature, click on the participant tab or the reactions tab on your Zoom toolbar. We find that where it exists may depend on which Zoom version you have. Just click on that icon and we'll be alerted, and we'll ask you to speak. Of course, you're all welcome to type a question into the Q&A or chat box, and we will hope you will share not only your questions, but share with us ways that your association has used in the past these community outreach smart growth resources. So today we're going to have three speakers: Kim Mcclellan, Public Policy Director for the Fredericksburg Area Association of Realtors in Virginia; Amber Little, the CEO of the Mountain Central Association of Realtors in Idaho; and Nick Scarcy, Local Government Affairs Director for North Carolina Realtors. But before we begin the presentations, let's find out who is in the Zoom room and learn a bit about you. We have three quick questions for you to answer. Each will go up for about 10 seconds. And here, I believe, is poll number one. And we'll see what we get back. All right, looks like we have a good share of folks. Majority local AEs and local GADs make up about 75% of the audience today. Great. Next question, please. All right. Okay, so in terms of have you all ever used one of the community outreach grant programs, placemaking leads by about 50%, housing opportunity 25%, 30%, smart growth 35%, and fair housing 25%. All right, on to the last question. All right, so in terms of using one of the four grants this year, unsure wins at 45%, but then there's a pretty even distribution around smart growth, fair housing, and housing opportunity. But placemaking, 43% of you indicated that you're intending to use that grant this year. All right, well, that's good. That'll keep our grant folks busy. Thanks for thinking out through the year. Okay, well, that was great. Helps us to sort of know how widely these resources are used, both in the past and going forward. So thanks for participating in that. Now, I'm sure that the information today will provide more ideas, hopefully, ways that your association can use our grants to develop a partnership with your local government. And now on with the show. First, we will hear from Kim Mcclellan. Kim has served as a public policy director for the Fredericksburg Area Association of Realtors since 2010. Aside from working with local elected officials to ensure that the voice of real estate is heard, Kim also represents FAR in regional coalitions and groups, including the local Chamber of Commerce and various housing-related efforts. In addition, she also serves as a member of the Mary Ball Washington Regional Council for Go Virginia. Kim is going to share her experiences in using both the Community Outreach Smart Growth Grant and our growth polling program. Take it away, Kim.
Thank you, Hugh, and thank you to everybody on the call today. Greetings from Fredericksburg. It is nice to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So, all right, thumbs up, everybody could see me. Good, thank you. Okay, so as you said, I'm from Fredericksburg, Virginia. For those of you who are not familiar with Fredericksburg, we are a small town, but a bigger area, about 50 miles south of DC. The Fredericksburg Association is about 1,700 realtor members. The city of Fredericksburg is about 24,000, but our larger area is about 320,000 people. But we're much more than just a bedroom community of the nation's capital. We have a rich river history with a large tributary of the Potomac River. We've got lots of Civil War sites, and we are the boyhood home of George Washington. We also have a lot of traffic, a lot of growth, and a lot of infrastructure challenges. So many years ago, when I first started here, we decided that we really wanted to position our association to be the source of research on housing for our area. And our first foray into smart growth was actually a pretty big one. We did a very large housing demographic study. We felt like we obviously have a lot of real-time data from our agents, from our MLS, and we have a lot of anecdotal information from people. Things are getting too expensive. Nobody wants to come here anymore because of the traffic. But we wanted to get real data points to back up some of this. So we did a large study, and it was amazing. That really solidified for us that through NAR, through the funds that we have and the programs that we can utilize, we can really position ourselves as that source of research. And I'm not a researcher, not an economist, so it doesn't have to have any in-house expertise. We have the ability to go outside and get some great information. So we did this study and we got an amazing response. And when I say we got a great response, what does that really mean? What did we do with the study? So this is just a couple slides to show you what we ended up using. Now we got a big, thick study with lots of stuff to read and lots of beautiful charts and graphs, but we turned this into a really user-friendly presentation that I did a pretty labor-intensive thing with this. I went around to all the boards of supervisors and some of the planning commissions and a lot of our housing stakeholders, our nonprofits, and made this presentation. And it was great. I mean, this kind of information is still talked about. We did this in 2017, and we still get shout outs at meetings referencing the FAR 2017 housing study, because it wasn't just us saying this is what we hear from our realtors. We hired an economist to go and look at our region, and we looked at all sorts of things: demographics, economics, the intersection with homeownership rates. So we got to share great information about this, the big delta between income from homeowners versus renters. We did this was one of our powerful slides. When I went to one of our meetings with our city, we did kind of an informal work session, and there were members of the public there, and I got kind of grilled by members of the public, which was kind of intimidating. But people said, hey, we feel like housing is getting really expensive, but your numbers for owners are not as bad as we would have thought they were. Are you sure your data is correct? How is it possible that in the city of Fredericksburg, with a $400,000 median price, only 20% of homeowners are cost burdened? So we were able to take the data from the study and show them, this is not just our feeling, what we're hearing, we've got data to back it up. And we also use this in more passive ways. Like I said, I took my list on my Outlook and sent it to everybody who I've worked with, all elected officials, planning department officials, economic developers, and they love this information. And one of the most powerful tools that we had in here was predictions of the kind of housing we're going to need. Because I know that in a high growth area, and probably a lot of you are dealing with this, we have sometimes these no growth sentiments that we're just growing too quickly. we're too big, we need to stop it. Well, we were able to look and say, hey, look, in all of these different price categories, people you say you want to make a home for, teachers, firefighters, service employees, they're not able to afford in the price points that we have here. We need to build, 1,500 more units in the 250 and under range, and that's just not happening. So we really put that information out there to work together with elected officials to say, hey, we want to make some headway on that. So that was a great experience. And fast forward to 2020, before the pandemic, felt like a year I wanted to make a statement. Lots of stuff wanted to happen in 2020. We wanted to do something new for the new decade. So we were looking at what we could do, and we really weren't ready to undertake another $50,000 study when we were still getting so much mileage out of the one that we had. So I think through talking with Hugh, I called up to NAR and said, hey, we want to do something. What is this something we can do? What am I missing? What have we not used yet? And this idea of the smart growth poll came out, which we thought was amazing. Because again, a lot of that anecdotal information we're able to verify or refute by doing a study with hard data. So we hear a lot, the traffic is too bad here. People aren't going to want to move here anymore. We're growing too much. Our citizens don't want us to be involved in economic development and that kind of stuff. We don't need any more development in this area. So we did a poll and we doubled this together. We got a smart growth poll, and then we also got $20,000 in funding to follow up on that poll to address housing affordability. So we were able to use the NAR Smart Growth Level 2 grant at $5,000. And we used our Virginia Realtors Issues Mobilization Fund, not because we didn't want to use NARs, but because our local folks had a lot of funds there. So we used them, but we would be very happy to use NAR as well. So like you said, we worked with American Strategies, who are amazing. They sent me a whole bunch of copies of other smart growth polls because I knew what I wanted, but I didn't really know what I wanted. I knew the outcome that I wanted, but I didn't know the questions to ask. So we went through, and they spent a lot of time with me going through copious other studies to say, okay, these kind of questions I want, not this one because it's not really pertinent to our more rural area. And just before the pandemic stuff started to go crazy, we were able to interview 425 adults in a 3-county region in our footprint. So one thing that I was talking about before is this anecdotal information that we were really trying to fight against. So we heard from elected officials sometimes, my constituents aren't happy. There's too many people moving here. For those of you who are familiar with the I-95 corridor, traffic is awful. And we have some of the worst traffic in the entire country between Stafford County, our northernmost jurisdiction, and the city, and Washington, D.C. So we really wanted to ask a lot of questions around how people are thinking about commute and amenities, because we are sort of a bedroom community of DC, even though we're much more than that when you live here, but we don't have quite the same amenities as Alexandria and Arlington, our folks to the north. So we wanted to see what people felt about that. So we were, kind of actually really pleasantly surprised. The traffic is not good, but it's not a deciding factor for people when they're thinking about leaving the area or moving down here. So when you look at these numbers, 46% of people, which is a lot of people, are okay with their commute, which I was not expecting. Over half of our respondents were very happy with our cultural resources, libraries, theaters, and music venues. That's great. They are less happy with affordability, which we knew. And then when we're looking at level of property taxes, nobody really likes paying taxes. So that sort of always is we're not really thrilled with that. But 28% said they were okay with our taxes. So now when we look ahead at where are people, when they're going to decide where to live, what makes them come to the Fredericksburg area? And the number one issue is safety of the neighborhood. So when we're looking at people's decision-making process, you would think by what you read in the paper and by what sometimes we hear from our elected officials, that traffic was the number one issue, that people were going to come down here and drive that 95 corridor and say, forget it, you are off the list, this is too bad. And that's just not true. When you look at the level of importance of factors, the commute doesn't even rank in the top 5. It wasn't that important to people. The affordability is important, which is something that we struggle with, but people felt like safety, availability of schools, obviously schools is a huge one, was much more important than traffic. So this was something we could say to people, our elected officials, hey, we know traffic is an issue and we want to fix it, but look at in the scheme of the region that you have, we have a lot to be proud of. And then we were able to verify, when we're looking at housing creation, a lot of times we have this perspective, right, of these big McMansions, and people are upset about, the lack of first-time home buyer opportunities. And we were able to verify that with our study. A lot of people are concerned that we just don't have enough opportunities for first-time home buyers, for people in middle and lower income categories. And this is something that, we need to pay attention to. So we took that study and we put it together in this nice little handout that we've given to a lot of our elected officials. We shared this far and wide after we did it to say, hey, look, 93% of your residents, 93% are happy with the quality of life in your jurisdictions. That is amazing. Y'all are doing a great job. So that was something I felt that was powerful. 75% of people think there's enough convenience factors. We have enough amenities. We don't need to be Fairfax or Northern Virginia. We can be little Fredericksburg, and that is just fine. We are attracting people very well on our own. So we were able to use this to really, communicate with our elected officials. And something that I do, and we do this every month, is we email our local elected officials every single month, not to ask them to do something or to talk about a development or complain about a downzoning. We email them every month with the cold, hard statistics of what's going on in their market. We pull those stats from our MLS, and whenever we have the opportunity, we always include stuff like this so that they have that data to refer back to. And it's a great way to create a relationship with people that doesn't have to be always reactive and sort of adversarial if you're always only talking to them when you want something or when you're trying to oppose something. So we've really utilized the Smart Growth Program to be able to give them data and information to really build that relationship. So when we do have an issue on something, we can call friendly faces, people who know that we are there to serve as a resource too. So we knew that affordable housing was an issue, and that brings us to our big $20,000 grant that we did. I'm sure a lot of you get this, when you're talking with folks. Okay, so affordable housing is a major problem. What do we do about it? Realtor Association, what proactive steps do you think we can take as the government to support affordable housing? And we were like, oh, well, we're not really sure. We've got, these great sort of mom and apple pie statements about housing affordability and choice, but what does that really mean? How does that translate into actual actionable items for our association to promote and to tell these elected officials who are looking to us to be leaders on this? What do we say? How do we do that? And we know we didn't have to recreate the wheel. There's lots of great examples out there, but how do you translate that to your specific region? And how do you go about sort of putting those all together? So we used our grant to hire a local firm out of Northern Virginia to look at things from our perspective, understanding, right, that we are a realtor association with an eye towards, of course, homeownership, knowing that we have lots and lots of agents who work with tenants too. How do we create that pipeline to homeownership and really support those efforts for first-time home buyers? Our market has gone absolutely crazy in the last year. And I hear from people all the time, oh, this is great. The market's so hot. Your sellers must be thrilled. The market's doing well. Well, sure, if you're selling and moving, to rural Tennessee where the median price is $125,000, things are great. If you're here and you are a first-time home buyer, or you're thinking of selling and moving in somewhere else, you're losing contract after contract. A hot market is not necessarily a great market. It's not balanced for a lot of folks. And we are seeing individuals who have lost a dozen offers before they finally get one, or they just decide to rent because it's just too competitive. That's not sustainable, and it's not healthy for our market. So we were able to work with this company, and we're in the process of sort of validating these choices. As you can see, they run the gamut of things from challenging to do to easier to do. And what we're going to do is try to figure out, where do we start? We're not necessarily going to advocate for all 10 of these or 7 of these. We're going to pick what we think are the most important and maybe the easiest ones to do to start and try to push them forward. So one of the things that is important when we're dealing with NAR grants is that member engagement. And I know that sometimes I get in my little silo of public policy. I've got a few members who are really interested, but a lot of other people are like, you just, you do your thing and you let us keep selling houses and putting signs in the yard and we're good. But we know that it's really important to get that feedback from our members. So when we did our poll, we did do it last March, and we didn't really do anything with it for quite a while because our elected officials, when we got our results in early April, they were not in a position to hear about what was going on with our smart growth poll, right? They were dealing with much bigger things. So we put the pause on that for a little while, but we didn't think that those data points were not valid because of what was going on with COVID. People were still happy with the amenities around here. So we put together a little meeting with our agents and said, hey, come tell us if what you're seeing and what you hear in your business matches with what our study says. We had a great conversation with our members and had a lot of people who were very interested in that and came to that. And the next one we're doing is going to be a little bit more action oriented. So we have this great affordable housing study. What we want to do, a public policy committee is the group that I work with most, wants to gather feedback from members, put that together, and then look at our study and make recommendations to our board of directors on which of those priorities to push going forward. So we're hosting an event much like this one, where we're going to go over the study, but we're also going to do some interactive polling. What things do our members think will have the biggest impact? Is it a lack of a down payment? Will some sort of revolving loan fund or housing trust fund be the biggest thing? Is it our government regulations? Do we need to look at really talking to our elected officials about density, which is something that scares some of our rural communities a little bit more? What do they think is going to have the greatest near-term impact and maybe be the most politically uncontroversial to move forward to start with? And then we'll take that information back to our board and have that discussion there. And really, I mean, we want to be able to take what we're going to do and turn that into another NAR grant. We want to go out to the public, and while we never intended it to be like this, we did this poll a year ago, and we always wanted to do something on affordable housing. I couldn't have imagined a better time for us to have gotten this, because our supply issues are so serious right now that I think the voice of the real estate industry talking about affordable housing is going to be just lend great value to our members. One of our counties a year ago, we had a less than 2-month supply of homes. We had 400 homes in the market in one of our counties. I pulled the numbers yesterday. There were 71 homes, 0.3 months of supply in one of these counties. It's just mind-boggling. So for us, this is going to be a great media opportunity, but certainly not in an opportunistic way. I mean, we really do want to make a difference, but I think it positions us very well to be out there and be strongly supportive of something that is only going to be a continuing issue. I think I thought maybe, last July, certainly when this is over, things will start to normalize and we'll get more listings on the market. Well, I just don't think that's going to happen in a short amount of time. I think we're going to be dealing with these supply constraints for a long time, and to have the realtors out there strongly supporting efforts to expand affordable housing, I think is going to be a great thing. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I really can't say enough about the staff at NAR for walking me through grants. I know I've called with some issues that really, ideas that didn't necessarily translate well into a grant. We were always able to work to find something that would. And I always tell my members, I love getting these grants because this is your members' money at work. This is a way for us to talk about the value of their NAR membership, especially for some members who maybe don't take advantage of stuff and aren't that engaged. What do we really do for them? What are we fighting for? And this kind of stuff is so great. And it's also a lot of the research that we've done is stuff they can put into their listing presentations. They can use when they go out. So I think it provides incredible member value for them to use in their business, and then for us to use in terms of promoting the image of realtors in the community. We care, we are part of this community, and the NAR grants can really help you put that best foot forward.
Kim, that was great. Thank you. That was really inspirational. Thank you for sharing that story. And what I love about what you all did is that you found a sequence to use several different resources. And all this land use stuff and advocacy can take some time, and there sometimes is a logical sequence to using a poll and a grant and sort of coming back year after year to advance an issue as it slowly moves through the system. So really nice story. Thank you. We're now going to turn to Amber Little. Amber lives in the small resort town of McCall, Idaho, and she is an Idaho native. She has served as the AE for 4 years and loves being part of the realtor community. And Amber, please tell us your story. What do you got going out there?
Thanks for the introduction, Hugh. I just want to point out, we do live in a small community, and I'm actually the AE. My association has only 200 members. And I am a one-woman show out here. So I know sometimes with these grants, they may seem intimidating, especially if you're the only one doing it. But guarantee you the time and effort is definitely worth it. We were able to utilize more than one Smart Growth grant, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the recent one we utilized. So let me share my screen here. All right, so as I mentioned before, we in 2020 we applied for a Smart Growth grant, a level 2, and we were able to use that. And I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a history on how we arrived at what we needed and how this grant really fit into what we were doing here in our community. To do that, first I'm going to give you a little Idaho history. When our state was found in initial inception, the federal government actually granted over 2.4 million acres of land to the state of Idaho. They said, this land is ours, but we're going to give it to you, but the catch is you need to utilize its resources in the years to come to help fund public education. So as you can see by this map and the little color around there, it's throughout the entire state that these endowment lands were gifted and exist. So zooming down into our little town of McCall, Idaho, this is a picture directly on the lake, Payette Lake. Here, our town was originally a logging community. Boise Cascade had a mill directly on the lake, and they would log the timber in the forest and also some of this endowment lands here, and they used the lake to push the logs down to the mill. That mill ran through 1977. And fast forward now, we no longer have that resource. We do still log, but the mill is not there. So ultimately, we rely heavily on recreational tourism. We have a vast majority of lakes, rivers, hunting, fishing, hiking, mountain biking, skiing in the winter months. That's what we have to offer. And ultimately, our economy revolves around our nature and our background. And it's a very important part of who we are as a community. And it also is shaping the future of who we are becoming as a community as well. Our population is 3,000 during the week and about 40,000 during the weekends. On holidays, we can get up to about 60,000 people coming to enjoy our natural resources here. We have a lot of second homeowners. So just circling back to what I first talked about with the endowment lands, we have a huge swath around our lake and bordering our Forest Service that are part of these endowment lands. And the Idaho Department of Lands has a fiduciary duty to make sure those resources are making money for their beneficiary, the education. So currently, because we no longer have that mill functioning and logging is not going on in those areas, they're actually losing money on those lands surrounding the lake. So ultimately, even though the greatest thing to do would be to keep it in the state of Idaho, they have a duty to have the revenue stream. So if it's not bringing revenue for logging, then what do they do to continue to support education? So developers have been sending proposals, obviously lakefront property. This is prime real estate right here. They would love to trade or buy it for development purposes. Now, I think that we kind of always viewed this land as a community, like it's the state land, it's always going to be there, kind of like federal land. And this whole process was actually a really educational thing for, I think, our community and for us as an association to understand that although those are state owned, they serve a purpose. And so ultimately, if the Idaho Department of Lands does decide that they want to trade it or sell it off to make money for education, that the access as we know it and as our community has thrived and evolved around in the lake and some of the river waterways are threatened. And this could forever change the way our community exists. So as an association, as these proposals were being brought to the table with the Idaho Department of Lands, we felt we needed to do something. You know, we need to be part of this and make sure our voices as realtors and as community members are heard. So we reached out to our local land trust, the Payette Land Trust, and we discussed with them the proposals and, you know, what they felt was going on and what we could do within the community to help preserve these areas. So ultimately, we decided with them that we needed data. We needed something on paper to present to our leaders, to present to the departments of lands, to show them that this area, people want it preserved. It's important to them. So we applied to the National Association of Realtors for a smart growth grant, and we received $5,000 in funding. We kicked in $1,000 of our own to fund a survey. That money was used for hiring a professional to create the survey. We also had costs associated with marketing, both online and local newspapers and such. And then afterwards, we had the data analyzed and presented. It was presented to local officials, different groups around the community. Our local realtors obviously were part of that as well. So really just to dive in. And ultimately, although there was tons of data that we got from that survey, overwhelmingly, we could tell there was a passion for making sure that even if they decide to develop around the waterways, that we find a way to conserve those areas for recreational use, as well as just the natural resources of what makes our area what it is today. So with that information, the Payette Land Trust has actually created an alternative proposal to the Idaho Department of Lands. We actually just had a deadline on March 1st with the community questions portion of it. The realtors were involved with that and getting that out to the community to make sure that they have those questions and comments available when they submit their proposal to the Idaho Department of Lands. And ultimately what they're trying to do is maybe piecing out small portions of what they're looking at to lease off and create conservation easements so we can continue to enjoy and access the Forest Service around it and the lake and the rivers and such. So, and this is actually a picture of the Land Trust meeting with our governor, Governor Little of the state, talking to him about these projects along the waterways and the conservation efforts we have. So we really appreciate being able to reach out to the National Association and for their support with these grants with Smart Growth, enabling us to help shape our community. And hopefully we can keep this, you know, growth is inevitable. Development is part of our jobs, but we can make sure to look at what we're doing and really analyze it and make sure we're creating the best product and the best community for our future generations. Thanks.
Great, Amber, that was a lovely tale and a great example of how a small association can use these resources effectively as well. And I know Idaho is one of you know, a handful of states where, you know, really what you've got economically is the natural beauty there, and the effort to protect that is of paramount concern for sure. So now let's turn to our last speaker, and then after that we'll do some Q&A. We've got Nick Scarcy. Nick started his career working on several state-level campaigns in the Philadelphia House of Representatives, after which he moved to Greensboro, North Carolina, to serve as the Government Affairs Director for the Greensboro and High Point Associations. After serving in that capacity for 4 years, he moved into his current role as Political Operations Director for North Carolina Realtors. Nick, tell us your story. This is what I'm familiar with, but it's really good and I don't tire hearing of it. Take it away. Nick, I can't hear you here. There you go.
I got everything else right with the PowerPoint, not the mute button, of course. All right, thanks. So it's great to be here. This was a really great project that we worked on, and I'm very happy to share the story. It was worthwhile, and I hope some of you would consider doing it too. So how it all started. So back in summer of 2017, everything kind of converged at once. We were actually at GAD Institute at the time, and our planning director here in Greensboro was gearing up for their comprehensive plan. And our planning director was at a conference where Hugh was speaking. And so she talked about how much she loved Hugh's presentation about this Portland State University Smart Growth Survey. And it had all kinds of questions like, what type of a neighborhood do you want to live in? Is walkability important? Do you have amenities near where you live, et cetera, so on. And NAR does this every 2 years for the top 50 metros, of which Greensboro is not. And Sue, who again is gearing up for this update to the comprehensive plan, thought that it would be perfect for our GSO 2040 plan. And when they talked after the conference, Hugh said, well, why don't you go talk to your local Realtors Association and they can help get this started. And so for those who might not be familiar, real quick, comprehensive plan is a guide for growth for the city, typically for an extended period of time. In our case, it was going to be implemented in 2020 and run through 2040. And it usually has some big goals for growth, things like highlights areas for growth, maybe there are maps, different policies that they feel should be implemented, and usually gets a good amount of community input. So at this point, I actually had not yet met Sue. I was still fairly new on the job, and we had been trying to set up a meeting, and we finally got the chance to meet. And when we met, I thought she had a really interesting perspective that I feel is going to be indicative of a lot of other local planning directors and city officials out there. So I'll share that with you. So Greensboro has just shy of 300,000 people, decent sized planning and zoning department, and she's a pretty good director. They had considered doing some polling themselves to base the comprehensive plan on, but they had not, really they didn't have any idea on how to go about doing that. They had never done any type of polling. They didn't know who to turn to, who to ask, how much it would cost. And money was a little bit concerning, but really they wanted some expertise and to know that they were getting, trusted opinions and a really good product as their main goal. And luckily NAR was able to provide us with all of that. The other thing I keep putting in all these slides are rough dates. And that'll help kind of inform, to give you a sense of the timeline of all of this, because I'll circle back to that at the end. So that was the summer of 2017. Now we're in fall of 2017. I had reached out to Hugh and then Joe Good at American Strategies. Joe is wonderful to work with. We had several conference calls. We edited down the survey. As you can see here, we don't have a subway or a ferry or anything like that. We try to use a little bit more of the local lingo on some of the questions. And we were fortunate that our planning crew, through previous smart growth activities and previous advocacy, really believed in smart growth. And so it just made everything a lot easier. From there, we had a local election that fall, and we didn't really want the two to overlap, or we didn't want people to think that this was political in nature. So we waited until after those November elections, and then we launched our poll. So I think we got some top line results in late December, but we got the full results in early 2018. And American Strategies provides some awesome results. So this first document, this and then the next slide, there's an executive summary up front, and then it goes through and highlights some graphs and charts for things that they pulled out and thought were really interesting. And everything's just in very readable, short snippets. It's very user-friendly. So if you have an elected official who's not used anything like this before, or in my case, city staff who hasn't, dealt with too many surveys, this is a lot more user-friendly and accessible to folks. And then I also have the crosstabs, which I'll show you here in a little bit. And the other great thing, at the time, we weren't sure if there was going to be a small cost to the city or not. And NAR was able to provide this free of charge to the city of Greensboro, which was fantastic. They actually came in a little under budget, so it came out really well. So this, just kind of demonstrative of what they'll do. They'll pull out really interesting pieces of data, and because it's a national survey, you can compare it to other cities. And I was really proud of this 89% number until I saw Kim's 93% number. So now I feel like we need to do a lot more to bring it up and be even more competitive. But at least nationally, we know that we are above average, which we can be really thankful for. And then these are the crosstabs. This is a massive PDF, and it's a lot more tedious to go through, but they have some really awesome breakdowns for income, education, like number of cars, type of dwelling, race. And then as somebody in government affairs, the part that I loved, they had party registration and city council districts. And so as we're reviewing these, we start to realize that this is actually going to be really good for advocacy. So you can start, we did this in service of our comprehensive plan to have a good companion document, hard stats, but we started to realize we could use this for a lot more. So this is kind of how you can start painting a picture. If Greensboro knows, for example, or we do know that we are losing millennials at a pretty good clip. So through other data that we have collected. So if the city, let's say, wanted to hang on to them and say, hey, we need to put some policies in place that are going to help us hang on to millennials, you can go through and you can look at those things that they believe are very important and they want to see in their community. And, you can see the results here. A lot of these are not necessarily revolutionary or things that you can't pull out of national data, but now we can say locally, if you want to accomplish X, Y, and Z, here are these things that we've pulled and have hard data on that you can do to achieve those goals. And again, on the crosstabs, if there was a proposal to expand bus service and or add more bike lanes for those who need it, we could look at the following data and we could figure out where it would be in most demand. And, District 1 or 2 in Greensboro, broken down by city council, lower income, slightly higher density, they place the highest priority on both of these counts. And then the constituents in District 5, which is a higher income, less density, ranked at lowest. So you can start slowly putting a picture together that really helps inform decisions that elected officials might make. So after that, we did some follow-up. We tried to do as much PR as we could. We put out a press release or two. We got a few articles written. We shared the results at a city council meeting and then with council members as we meet with them. We got an additional smart growth grant to bring in a speaker, Chris Lineberger, and he went through the survey and pulled out some of the more interesting parts that linked up with sort of his expertise, and we went through those. It was a great program. It's actually still on the Greensboro Realtors Facebook page. We live streamed it. So if you're interested, that is available. And now we're moving into, I'd say, mid to late 2018. And this is where kind of we had done the majority of our work, making sure that there was a good statistical basis for the comp plan and that all of the information that they needed was there. And so this was a very long and rightfully so public input period that ran through 2018 and into 2019. There was a lot of public listening sessions. There was a lot of really good community engagement, and we would just tangentially participate. We had already done a lot of our work, and we provided a draft eventually when that draft was available. We gave pretty good feedback. I tell people that it almost looks like the realtors wrote it, which I don't think you can get much better than that. And then, of course, 2020, everything just got pushed back and delayed a bit. But it eventually passed the planning board in May of 2020 and then passed the council that following June. So I think there's a couple of my big takeaways here. One, again, thinking of the timeline, we started this in 2017 in July, and it didn't pass council for final adoption in June 2020. So that's a full 3 years, and COVID certainly didn't help. And it took a long time, and there was a good bit of work, but it was never too much. It was never too stressful, and it's spread out over an amount of time where it's very manageable. And I think, if this is something you want to do, if you want to partner with your planning department on a similar project where it's going to take a lot of time, just make that mental note in your head that you're going to need to plan out and schedule and budget time appropriately. And a number of benefits came out of this. First of all, and really the main goal that we went into this was we helped get an awesome draft of a comprehensive plan turned into a final product that's going to guide growth in Greensboro for the next 20 years. And then we also realized that it would be a great advocacy tool. And, that's something that, we can use for years to come and help prevent bad policy and encourage good policy. There was no cost from the city to the city, which also was excellent. And probably the best part of it that'll be the most long lasting is that we got a lot of goodwill from elected officials and city staff. And we're really seen as experts in growth and development, and that we can provide the technical expertise or maybe some type of a grant to help a big project like this come together. And from here, we're just looking forward to implementation. So here's my contact info. I think we're going to jump into questions, but you can certainly always feel free to reach out with me. I've already talked to several people about this, so I know there's some appetite out there, but I'd love to chat and connect if you think this is something you'd like to pursue.
Great, Nick, that was great. Thank you. And now we know the ultimate challenge for you all is who can get to a quality of life of 100% first. We'll give you all 5 years to get there, but then we'll take a poll and see how that goes. Thanks for all that. We're going to move into Q&A in just 2 shakes, but I wanted just to give you a couple of details about our smart growth resources. Ryan, if you can put that up, that's great. So the first one really is, the 2 we talked about today, the smart growth grants. These are both found on the realtorparty.realtor website. And you can just put in the search bar, smart growth grants or growth polling, and those pages will come up and the appropriate staff contact for those. And those are both accepted on a rolling basis. There's no deadline except the smart growth grants lock out at, sort of maybe October 1st, October 15th, something like that. Next slide, please. We also have, you may be familiar with, but we've got this growth management Factbook that you all can download. It's put out by our land use law firm, Robinson and Cole. It's this great, it's like 200 pages of every growth management strategy you've ever heard of, and just like a short primer on each one, pros and cons for the real estate industry. And it's a great place to start, and just as a reference to keep on your desk or desktop, as the case may be. On Common Ground magazine, which hopefully you all receive, and we put out twice a year. And these we can get copies to you for you to deliver to your local elected officials. It's subtly branded with a Realtor R, and it's got about 10 stories in it about land use and growth issues. And it's just a great leave behind when you go to City Hall and make the rounds there. Just lets the elected officials know that you all are interested in land use issues and want to be part of the decisions that are made. And lastly, we have our smart growth class. It's 4 hours, and it's all about what is smart growth, what are the drivers behind it, what does it look like, and it's a great primer for not only members who are interested in this, but most associations who host this do invite in local elected officials, staff planners, and it gets everybody on sort of the same page, a same set of images, and you may not agree with each other, but you've got this common framework to move your common conversation forward. And then lastly, last slide, please. So we're doing this great thing this year, which is the virtual community outreach sessions. And these are, we call them the Can I Get a Grant for That? And basically, if you use, there's a Sign Up Genius, and you can Google this in, or not Google it, but if you're at realtorparty.realtor and look up virtual coaching session, there's a Sign Up Genius, and basically you'll have the whole community outreach team, all 4 of us there. Christine has put the link right into the chat. Thank you, Christine. And you get 30, 45 minutes with us. You can be you know, AEs, GADs, your president, leadership, and we'll just have a conversation about the challenges in your community and which resources might be best set up to help you tackle those. So that's just been really popular. I hope you all will use it if you think that's appropriate. Okay, now we're on to the Q&A. Please, if you have a question, raise your hand. We've heard a lot of information. And let's see, any hands up? Anybody got a question? You can also just unmute yourself and ask away if you like.
Hey, Hugh, it's Bo Patton in Long Island.
Bo.
Excuse me for not being on camera. Can the 200-page fact book, can that be shared with elected officials, community leaders, and members of the public?
I think we generally like it to remain in-house unless there's kind of been a change of heart about that, and Christine Windle might be able to weigh in. We can talk about that also internally and just sort of see and send out some, what our current guidance is on that. In the past, it's actually, you need your password to get into it. So I believe, and so that's probably an indicator that we kind of want to keep in its entirety anyway, close to the vest at this point. But
Hi,
hey.
Bo, yeah, we'd love to talk to you about that. We can certainly look at the certain aspects of the chapters and what you want to pull out of the document and how you're going to use it, but we can certainly just set up a meeting offline just to talk about what the direction is on that, because that resource is for you to use. It includes incredible information on all kinds of growth management techniques to help you advance your position on these issues.
Okay, thank you all.
Thanks, Bo. Anybody else have a question? I'm scrolling through the participants list.
Hugh, sorry,
Yes.
I was trying to, sorry, this is Ashton with New Smyrna Beach Board.
Great. Yeah.
We did the smart growth class and the survey, and my committee looked over it. And one of the questions that I had from them is, the sample size. And I feel like, as someone that worked with the, the surveyors through the process, I understood the sample size. But when you look at like a community of about 25,000 people, they asked me, why did we only do 300? I just didn't know if anybody else came across those concerns from their members, or how, they would recommend that I answer those questions whenever they come across.
Sure. I do know, we could get into details another day, but I understand from American Strategies that it's tough for them to poll in any community that's smaller than like 10,000. Just tough for them to find enough phone numbers. And they may have tried there and didn't quite, our normal target is 400 for these growth polls. And they may have, I forget the details, but they may have tried and just couldn't get them. That's possible. As we've learned in every major election, like the polling sands are shifting dramatically. There's also the possibility that I've discussed with them, and I don't know if this works in some places or not, but we can use online internet polling. If it's a big enough area, they may have enough names in their sort of universe to do that, and that is a sort of a way to drive down the cost of doing a larger sample. But some associations also have sort of paid the marginal cost to American Strategies to get a larger sample size. And often that happens if, if your territory is multiple counties and you want to be able to compare the results from one county to another in your jurisdiction, then it might be necessary, but that's, Joe Good will help you figure out what you're looking at, what you want to do with it, and sort of guide you through that. Thanks, Ash. Anybody else? Okay.
I can add on that as well, because we ran into that as well, because we got 400 some respondents, and I think that wasn't expected by our folks. And when we talked to Joe, he said that number is still significant enough to encapsulate the whole community. So I'm not a really good stats guy, but I'll take Joe's word for it.
Yeah, I think that was kind of my thing too. I think some of our members, when they found out we were doing the poll, they were thinking they were going to get like an answer from all residents in the area. And I'm like, no, it's a sample. And, I think it's kind of just a little different when Joe was great and I loved working with him back and forth, but then it's like trying to take his, your trust that you have in him and relay it to everyone that you want to like listen to the data and everything. And that's kind of where I was trying to figure out communicative wise.
Okay. And our last question, I'm getting through the chat. Lorna asking, your city and the EDC are already working with a company to do a housing survey. Could our association use a grant to help with that cost? Let me just look internally. And I'll circle back. We'll push out some things, including the link to the recording through the AE and GAD hub pages. So look for that there within a week, and I'll make a note of that, Lorna, and figure out if that works. Anyway, there's some history there that I just need to find out what's all clear with that. Thanks for your patience. Okay, and with that, it's 3 o'clock on the nose. Join me in thanking our speakers. I learned a lot. I love hearing about how these grants hit the ground. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Nick, for using the resources, making them work, and go out and do more. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Look forward for those postings within the next week. And thank you for attending. And be sure to, if you have follow-up questions, we'll grab the chat and try to circle back with you. Thanks.